So we're continuing on Hilchot Birkot HaShachar, Siman Nun Hey, Avar Chaim with Mishna Berurah, and Daf Pei Vav Amud Bet is where we are. We almost completed Seif Gimel of Shulchan Aruch, and one important thing that we mentioned from the Kaf HaChaim is that unlike the Mishna Berurah, that based on the Ramah includes the Kaddish Titkabal, Kaddish Shalem that we say after the Tefillah as part and parcel of the Tefillah of Shemona Esrei of Shaliach Tzibur, which means the repetition of Shemona Esrei, and therefore if you lost your minyan in the middle of Chazarat HaShas, you could not just complete the Chazarah, the repetition, but you could also say Kaddish, not having 10. Maran, says the Kaf HaChaim, seems to hold that the Kaddish afterwards is not part and parcel of the repetition of the Tefillah, and hence, says the Kaf HaChaim, that because according to Maran, the Kaddish afterwards is not chelik of the Tefillah, and it's considered sort of an inyan acher, a new topic, if you lost the minyan before the Kaddish, then you should not say that Kaddish, which is, a piece of information that perhaps many who learn the Mishna Berurah may not pay attention to. Sif Daled Maran says, Yesh matirin, this is a old-time great one. Many people say, well, you don't have minyan, you bring a little kid, you give a chumash or a tanakh to them, and that somehow is supposed to become the 10th person. I still remember once when I was the victim, when I was a little kid, and they put a tanakh on my lap, and I was the 10th, the Asiri Kodesh. And where does that come from? It comes from this Maran Shulchan Aruch, which says not to do that, by the way. Maran says, right, this is Tosafot in the Gemara. Tosafot, we're going to have this very soon, Daf Memchet, coming up in Amud Yomi. The Tosafot bring this in the name of Rabbeinu Tam, that Yesh Omrim, Yesh Matirin, Lomar Davar Shebiktusha. There are those who allow Davar Shebiktusha to be said, B'tish'a v'seruf katan shu yoter miben shesh v'yodea lemim mitparelin, to include a minor who understands, who has matured enough, like a 6 and up, a mature kid that understands who you say brachot for, who you daven into, and so on. Lemim mitparelin, you could bring him in as the 10th person. Velo nir'in divrehem digdolei poskim, and it does not seem to be agreed upon by other gdolei poskim. Maran says, "Vehu adin de eved veisha en mistarfin," and same is the woman and avadim are not considered as a seruf, they're not included in the minyan of asara. Now says the Ramah, even if you give him a tanakh on his lap, on his hands, still you cannot count him as 10. Mihu, and here is where it starts from. Ramah writes, Mihu yesh na'agin la'akel b'sh'at ha'dachat. There are those who are noheg that b'sh'at ha'dachat, push comes to shove, there are those who are willing to be mekel, says Ramah, rather, to include the kid that understands what's happening as the 10th person. And this is the Rosh and the Mordechai says. Now, this becomes a machloket seemingly between Maran and Ramah. On one hand, Maran holds you cannot do it. The Ramah also says you shouldn't do it, even with the Chumash, even with the Tanakh. But the Ramah says, well, push comes to shove if you have nobody else and you need a minyan and so on. There are those who are noheg to be mekel. Now, what's the halacha? Says the Mishna Berurah. Al yedei Chumash, because we don't consider this minor as a man just because he's holding a Tanakh. Even if you have a pile of Sfarim on your hand, it doesn't make you a man because of that. B'shat adachak, that sometimes you could, push comes to shove, rely on it, says the Ramah, Mishna Berurah explains this. There's nothing to do with Chumash, not Chumash. Even without a Chumash, you could rely on it. Because the Rabbeinu Tam is the Baal HaShita. Rabbeinu Tam does not require a Chumash. And even that is only one, not two. You have to have 9 adults and 1 minor, and that would, according to Ramah, in extenuating circumstances, would be sufficient. Levush says, I have never ever seen such a minhag. Even when push comes to Shav and you have all the ktanim, all the mature kids in the world, the minhag is not to do with Levush says. This is a Mordechai Yafin. Ubizmanenu, says the Mishna Berurah, in our generation, says the Chafetz Chaim, the minhag has evolved, says the Chafetz Chaim, to bring 1 katan in when push comes to Shav in extenuating circumstances. We give him a chumash, says the Chafetz Chaim, and you use it. That's only for hearing Baruchu and Kaddish, because that's considered the chiyuv. Aval Kaddish shelachar alenu, to add Kaddishim after alenu l'shabeach, lo yomru. You should not add anything. That's not an obligation. Says the Chafetz Chaim, I just told you what happens in my generation, in my time. But many, if you want to know what the psak is, many poskim are stringent that even in the most extenuating circumstances, we would not rely on this, because the katan is not considered an adult, and you cannot make a minyan with a katan. Even b'shat ha'dechak. At the very least, he has to have 13 full years. And only then you could consider him as part of the minyan. And that is what the Kaf HaChaim paskins, that is what Chacham Obadia paskins, that's what Rabbi Sion Abba Shaul paskins. Everyone basically agrees with this, that even b'shat ha'dachak, you cannot bring in a katan that's less than 13 years of age and be misaref them to the minyan, include them in the minyan. Chacham Obadia adds also that if you see that you're 9 and you see they are planning to bring a katan in with you, and the katan will be a minyan, you all of a sudden will need the bathroom and you will get lost, right? That's the Chacham Obadia says. What? The Tosafot brings it in the name of Rabbeinu Tam. We will have this in the Gemara, B'ezrat Hashem, when it comes in the next parak, that you could be metzaref a katan, for instance, for zimun, right? You have concepts like that. To apply those concepts to tefillah is what the Rabbeinu Tam did, but again, the many Rishonim disagree with him, and that's the halacha. So therefore, Obadia says, if you see that they're going to use you in a minyan, that they're going to bring a katan and they're not going to listen to you, you don't have to stay there. Leave. Because if you stay, they're going to be saying Dvarim Shebiktusha without asara, and that's on you. Therefore, you should not partake in that. Now, if you are in a minyan, if you're already in a minyan that they did this, right? The Chacham Obadia says you should not answer amen. If you already didn't leave, didn't have the backbone, or you couldn't leave, they locked the doors, and they're doing it, right? So then you should not answer amen, says Chacham Obadia. Or let's be honest, a little bit more sympathetic to the situation. It says once there are those who allow this, even though that he shouldn't do it, it's asur to do it. But if you're there, because there are those who allow this, the Shtav Rabbeinu Tam, the Ramah brings it, you could at least answer amen. That much he's willing to do it, even though that if you ask him, he said, don't do it, right? But if you find yourself in such a binyan already, he says you could do it. Chacham Obadia says absolutely not. Safek amen la'akel. You do not answer amen. You do not answer kedusha, kaddish, nothing. because it's not being said legitimately, so therefore you don't give into it.
Is there any nusach for this? Is there any nusach for this, like legitimate?
Again, the Ramah says it is b'shat dachak, and Chafetz Chaim says that was the minhag in his time, but he also acknowledges that almost all the Gedolei Poskim disagree with it. But Chafetz Chaim says it's absolutely asur, don't do it. It's not legitimate. Chavadia says don't even go along with it. If others are doing it, leave. And don't let them do it. Right? So says the Mishna Berurah, Onen and Mistaref Leminyan. Khalila, someone that was lost, a immediate family member, and has not been buried yet. The body has not been buried yet. That's Onen. Onen is not counted as Minyan. And that means Onen for someone that you're chayav lit'abel alav, someone that's one of the 7 immediate relatives, which is husband, wife, son, daughter, brother, sister, mother, father. One of those is the chiyuv of abelut. Afilu eno mutar lav lekavro. Even if he's not the individual that is taking care of the kivura. Other people are taking care of it. Rabbi Kadisha is involved, and so on and so forth. But the Maaseh, if he's considered onen, says the Mishna Berurah, you do not count him as the minyan. If you are in the same city as the body, even if you have Rabbi Kadisha and so on that are helping, you still are considered the onen that is not part of the minyan, unless you already have given it to the hand of katafim. Now, same is if it has been already given to Chevra Kadisha after they take the body. After they take the body, then Chacham Obadia writes that that onen is considered part of the minyan. You could count them as the minyan. Now nowadays is a little bit different. The system. Usually, what happens is you have the person either in the hospital or at home with the hospice and so on. And when they pass, there's going to be a time period, between when they pass and until the documents are released and the Chevra Kadisha could take them, or at home. Sometimes it could take longer even. Until they are allowed to take the body and so on. So until then, they should not be considered part of the minyan. But after they already gave it over to Chevra Kadisha, and Chevra Kadisha is taking care of everything, that's Chacham Obadia. You could already count this individual as a minyan, even though that technically speaking, he's still considered an onen. But if the corpse is in a different city, if the deceased relative is not in town, and they messaged you, this happens all the time now. Before the kivura happened, they called, they said it. And there is someone that's taking care of him in the other city. Let's say if you're Los Angeles, in New York, you pass, the relative passes in New York, and there are people who are taking care of the process of kivura. And you're in Los Angeles, right? In that case, he's considered part of minyan, and there's no problem with. Now, the Kaf HaChaim writes that even if you're in the same city as the deceased relative, so long as you have people who are taking care of the process of kivura, you're part of the minyan, as we mentioned. Again, Ahmadi says that if you have given him to Chevra Kadisha already, that is considered Masaro Lekatafim, and you are able to join a minyan at that point, meaning you're not davening because you're patur from davening, but you could be counted as a minyan. All this is for onin. אבל באבל ודאי מצטרף לברכת המזון ולתפילה. אבל for sure is considered part and parcel of the tefillah. Now,
the onin already gave made over, just still not considered also goodness when you look like washing down.
So that gets into the halachot of avelut. We could discuss that with Hashem, maybe in a different time. But Maran writes in halacha hey, im lo hevi shte sa'arot, afilu hu gadol b'shanim dinok katan ad she'yetzu rov shenotav. If a person does not have physical signs of maturity, which usually is measured by hair, hair in the area of ervav. If he doesn't have that, even if he has past 13 years of age, he still halachically is considered a katan until he passes the majority of a normal life expectancy. And at that point, you know that he is mature, but he is a saris, that he would never have hair. And then you could consider him as part of the minyan at that point. And if you see simanim that he is saris before age 35, then given that he's 13, he would be considered gadol. Nowadays, again, with all the tests that they have, it's much easier to know if somebody is a saris. So if they know already for sure that he's going to be a saris, he will be considered a gadol after 13, just like a regular bar mitzvah. And the Remara, what? So saris is a person that's missing some elements who translate in hormonal things that whether it's testosterone or others is not created in his body in the way that normal people have it. And there are different ways of that mentioned in Chazal of saris, but the outcome of it is that he won't have the simanim of ish in the age or ever, pretty much. He would not have it by the age that people have it, and therefore it's not a chisaron of him being a mature person. It's just that even after he matures, he's not going to have those signs of manhood because he's missing some elements of his hormonal growth and development in his body, which is never going to be there, right? Says the Ramah, umihu ein medaktekin bisarot ela kol she'igia lechla shenotav. We nowadays not really so specific about it to go check, but once we have chazaka the rava, there's a chazaka that once he has gotten to a certain age, that's considered already the maturity. We assume that he's grown and he has the maturity. At least with the Rabbanans, the difference between the Rabbanans and the Oraitas is something that Bezrat Hashem we will continue discussing in the days to come.